Welcome back to Central Colorado Ballistics. My name is Wally. At the range, everything behaves. Paper doesn't move unless the wind pushes it. Steel doesn't change its direction. Gel blocks don't decide they've had enough. Paper doesn't bite, but something out there might. Last time we talked about caliber philosophy, diameter over velocity, mass over speed, certainty over theory. We explored how thinking shaped cartridges like the 45 ACP, and how it evolved into more specialized answers like the 460 Roland, the 450 Bushmaster, and the 458 SOCOM. But today, we leave the bench. Today, we ask a different question. What happens when philosophy meets something with bone and density, muscle mass and intent? When the target isn't static, when it's not calibrated gelatin, when it doesn't care about your group size, when caliber philosophy meets something that bites back. There's a phrase that gets thrown around constantly: stopping power. It sounds definitive, confident, absolute, but it's not a measurement. It's not a unit. It's not something you can dial into a chronograph. There is no mystical knockdown power. If a bullet had enough force to physically knock down a 400-pound animal backward, it would knock the shooter backward equally. Physics applies in both directions. What people really mean is, will it stop the threat immediately? In defensive wilderness carry, that threat may weigh 300 pounds, or 600 pounds, or more. In hunting, the responsibility is different. You are not trying to stop. You are trying to end ethically. Those are not the same goal. Penetration versus expansion. On paper targets, expansion looks impressive. Large cavities, pedaled bullets, high-speed footage. But bone changes everything. A black bear's skull is not drywall. A hog's shoulder plate is not soft tissue. Velocity alone does not guarantee penetration. Diameter alone does not guarantee penetration. Momentum matters. Bullet construction matters. Sectional density matters. Angle matters. A long, heavy bullet for its diameter tends to penetrate deeper. That's why 220 grain 10mm loads and 300 grain 44 loads are often discussed in bear country. Mass carried forward in a narrow profile delivers through resistance more effectively. Let's talk about defensive carry first. Not hunting, not planned shots, not rests and optics. A sudden encounter, close distance, high stress. In Colorado, the primary large predator concern is the American black bear, not grizzly. Black bears here commonly weigh between 150 and 400 pounds. Thick fat layers in the fall, dense muscle around the shoulders. That shoulder structure protects the vitals, and that's what your bullet must defeat. Mountain lions, leaner, faster, ambush predators present a different problem. Thin frame, high speed, little warning. Wolves have also been reintroduced to parts of the state. Different biology, different bone structure, different penetration needs. Black bear encounters statistically resolve without shots fired. And that matters. Avoidance and awareness prevent more encounters than caliber ever will. Bear spray has shown high effectiveness in documented encounters. A handgun is a last resort tool. Caliber is a contingency, not a plan. So what matters in a defensive sidearm? Penetration, reliability, control under recoil, capacity, and accessibility. A handgun buried in a backpack is not defensive equipment. It is a decorative weight. 9mm in the wild. Modern 9mm loads have improved dramatically. Hard cast options exist, but margin matters. When bone thickness increases, margin shrinks. That does not make 9mm useless. It makes it specific. Specific to certain environments, specific to certain animals, specific to certain risk tolerances. 10mm auto. The 10mm auto occupies an interesting space. Higher velocity than 45 ACP. Deeper penetration in many hardcast loadings. Higher capacity than most Magnum revolvers. But not all 10mm is equal. A 180 grain hollow point designed for two-legged defense is not the same as 200 or 220 grain hardcast built for bone. Construction changes outcome more than caliber alone. Recoil increases. Wear increases. Shooter fatigue increases. And in a defensive encounter, follow-up shots matter. 357. The 357 has a long track record. Penetration, velocity, versatility, but capacity is limited. Reloading under stress is slower. Recoil is sharp. Sharp recoil slows some shooters more than heavy recoil. And control determines outcome more than raw energy. 44 Magnum. The 44 Magnum increases authority, more mass, more energy, more margin, but it also increases weight, blast, recoil. Full power 44 Magnum is demanding. Many shooters train with reduced loads for comfort. Reduced recoil practice does not perfectly translate to a full power recoil management. What gel doesn't show. Ballistic gelatin is a calibration tool. 10% ordnance gel simulates average soft tissue. It does not simulate hide thickness, fat layers, heavy shoulder bone, quartering angles. If we wanted more realism, we would add barriers, leather, denim, synthetic bone plates, even pork shoulder with intact bone, not to replicate a bear, but to demonstrate what penetration costs before reaching vitals. Penetration lost in the first 2 inches can mean everything at 12. Now we pivot. Defense is reactive. Hunting is intentional. Your responsibility increases. In defense, you are trying to survive. In hunting, you are choosing to take life. That choice carries weight. An ethical harvest requires adequate penetration, reliable performance at impact, sufficient energy for the animal pursued, and most importantly, shot placement within your capability. Distance changes everything. Velocity drops. Energy decreases. Wind begins to matter. A cartridge that feels overwhelming at 50 yards may feel inadequate at 200. This is where philosophy must yield to reality. You don't need extremes. You need adequacy. 30-30 Winchester. The 30-30 Winchester has harvested more deer in North America than most modern cartridges combined. moderate velocity, manageable recoil, effective inside practical distances. It does not dominate charts. It does not impress with extreme velocity numbers. But inside its intended range, it works. It proves something important. You don't need maximum. You need sufficient. You need consistency. 450 Bushmaster. The 450 Bushmaster exists partly because of the law. Straight wall cartridge requirements in certain states forced innovation. Heavy bullet. Large diameter. Sufficient close range energy. It sacrifices distance for authority. Inside 1 to 200 yards, it performs decisively. But stretch it too far and velocity loss becomes real. Again, 458 SOCOM. The 458 SOCOM approaches the problem differently. Originally developed with tactical considerations in mind. Heavy projectiles. Subsonic options. Capability with familiar platforms. In hunting applications, its mass delivers deep penetration in brush environments. Heavy 4-caliber bullets tend to maintain momentum even when immediate barriers are encountered. But like the 450 Bushmaster, range defines effectiveness. These cartridges are not long-range tools. They are authority inside a defined envelope, not supremacy. The animal pursued determines the tool. Whitetail is not elk. Elk is not bear. Bear is not hog. Authority must match autonomy, and autonomy does not negotiate. Hunting demands honesty, not bravado, not internet velocity charts. Honesty about distance. Honesty about recoil tolerance. Honesty about shot placement. Because unlike paper, the animal deserves a clean end. And that responsibility belongs to you when something bites back. Time compresses. Adrenaline narrows vision. Fine motor skills deteriorate. You will not rise to the occasion. You will fall to your level of training. Caliber cannot compensate for poor placement. Power cannot compensate for panic. Bone deflects bullets. Angles rob penetration. Movement changes autonomy mid-shot. Paper does none of those things. So, what should you carry? Carry what you can. Control under stress. Practice with regularity. Maintain reliably. For some, that's 10 mm. For others, 357 Magnum. For a few, 44 Magnum. Authority is meaningless without placement. Placement is meaningless without practice. Practice is meaningless without realism. Caliber debates are comfortable. They happen on benches, behind keyboards, at clean ranges. But the wilderness is not a debate. It is physics, biology, and consequence. When caliber philosophy meets something that bites back, power matters. But control matters more. Margin matters. But judgment matters more. Now here's the question. Would you like to see us actually test this? Layered hide simulations. Bone barriers. Different calibers through the identical setups. See what penetrates. See what deflects. See what truly maintains margin. Or we go deeper into a single cartridge. A two-part series. Where it came from. Why it was created. And where it stands today. Or do we finally put the classics head to head? 357 Magnum versus 44 Magnum. History, ballistics, control, real-world context. Let me know which direction we take next. Choose deliberately, train honestly, respect the animal, respect the risk. Paper doesn't bite, but something out there might. Freedom secured, rights defended.